and thank you to the organisers for inviting me to share the story of Name Your Hood. I thought what I'd do is just take you through very quickly how it all came to be and where I was in the world when Name Your Hood started, how we rolled it out in Cape Town, and our plans for rolling out to the rest of South Africa, which starts with Guguletu, which is a particularly exciting sort of chapter for us. So it all started a few years ago. I was living in New York, and one of the many things I loved about New York was the way the city functions so well, because as you can see, it's really a patchwork of neighborhoods, of very sort of evocative neighborhoods. Some of the names will be very familiar with, the likes of Soho and Tribeca. What happens is people form very strong associations with where they're from. So do businesses. So if you're in Soho, there's almost a clustering effect of businesses in each one of these neighborhoods. And I immediately thought of South Africa and our sort of struggle with identity, particularly in cities. If you look at how cities have been shaped, very poorly, the various governments that have interacted, and I thought there was an opportunity to do something different. So I started studying where the names came from and how these different neighborhoods developed, because they all had different reasons. So Soho, Tribeca, Dumbo. The name Tribeca we don't often assume is just the triangle below Canal Street. So it's a very small area which fits into that space. So I thought it would be great if we had something similar in South Africa, which forms these very strong bonds. And looking at how neighborhoods are used internationally, most cities have them, all cities have them. So for example, this is San Francisco. You'll see it's just neighborhoods, and the city is legible because of these neighborhoods. There's a much more creative and graphically strong map of San Francisco. That's Milan in Italy, again just carved it into cool neighborhoods. Buenos Aires in Argentina, Spanish-speaking city, but because of these neighborhoods, you know, if you want to go, for example, to see salsa dancing, to go to Recoleta, or to go for a steak, to go to a different region. So each one of these areas becomes very strong and has an association with something. I think it's slightly ironic that we're sitting in the Upper East Side Hotel in Woodstock. Upper East Side conjures up images of New York and the Upper East Side. And because the brand has become so strong internationally, we're now in Salt River trying to sort of aspire to this New York identity. And what we're trying to do is quite the opposite. It's say, well, let's create our own cool identities, and let's New York relate to, in the way that they might relate to Workhard or Molly Point or something. So that's really is where we're going with this. That's Toronto. Again, same thing, just making the city easy to navigate. And Paris with its arrondissements. So again, similar thing. Brands, I'm sure a lot of you are interested in brands. Neighborhoods have become brands, just as religious groups have and whatever else. So in Wallpaper magazine, they listed some of the best brands in Scandinavia, and a neighborhood in Copenhagen, Vesterbro, which is the meatpacking district, features as one of the top brands in Scandinavia. So amongst nudie jeans, whatever else it is, the brands of neighborhoods appear. So how is this useful? People often say, well, what's the point? It's great, so we have neighborhoods, what's the point of having a neighborhood? If you look at what they've done in places like New York, and this is elsewhere, and I keep going back to New York just because it's probably the preeminent example generally of neighborhoods. They've created things like a livability calculator, determined by neighborhood. So you can actually decide where to live based on, you'll see the inputs on the left-hand side. So affordability, housing, access to schools, and you can literally just change those and reorder the neighborhood. So that's just an example. And the guy behind this is a stats genius who was the inspiration behind the movie Moneyball with Brad Pitt. Tribeca was made famous really because of Robert De Niro living in the area. So in the wake of 9/11, he wanted to build pride in his neighborhood, Tribeca. So, so what he did is create the Tribeca Film Festival. So a neighborhood like that, the name Tribeca, is now this international identity. Wouldn't it be cool if we had something similar in South Africa? Again, it makes for legible cities. So any map around the world, particularly in foreign languages, if you get there and it's a very discernible and easy to use map, the city is just, as a function, more legible. And then finally, if you look at something like a shopping guide. So this is in New York, a shopping guide just for a couple of neighborhoods. Really, we're seeing that sort of clustering effect in certain areas of Cape Town. So Woodstock, as it becomes sort of trendier, you're seeing a lot of creatives moving in, clothing companies and the like. And that's exactly what happens. Once this identity is formed, businesses flow to them, and then from that comes business benefits. So we know we have it all, but we've never had, for a range of reasons, we've never had this neighborhood culture that's developed. So rather than having, like New York has, we all have town. So anybody say, where do you live, where are you going out? Oh, I'm going out in town. The next question is, oh, where in town? And then a typical conversation might be, do you know where the engine garage is near Mount Elsie? And then from there, it's like, well, so which way am I coming? Are you coming from town side, or are you coming from Sea Point side? And that's literally how we give directions. So wouldn't it be easier if we could just say, oh, I'm going out in Soho, or whatever, and then you know exactly just by the name, it conjures up the images of the kind of place that you're going to, and equally for brands to associate. So that was the concept, and it literally started as a chat over a few chats, over a few beers and whatever else with some friends of mine, and I said, wouldn't it be cool to do something like this? And decided that the easiest place to do it would be in Cape Town, particularly in the CBD of Cape Town, but very much in mind rolling it out elsewhere. So I sat down with a bunch of architects and planners and designers, and I took it to the city and everything, and I said, this is what the tourist has seen in Cape Town. This is the Google map. You'll see something like a German school is as big as Scotland, just the official name of Burkhardt. Somerset Square and Redham House School is more prominent than Sea Point or anything else. So it's not making for a user-friendly city at all. And what you have now is real estate agents determining what areas are called. So in Fresno, for example, and I'm going with Fresno, not Fresno. Fresno, you've got Upper Fresno and Uppermost Fresno. And that is actually a name. These things are being used and determined by real estate agents. So we said, would that be a much better map of Cape Town? And the key thing is, we're not changing any neighborhood names. There was always a policy, like people often got, because naming in South Africa is such a sensitive issue, and we're very, very aware of it. But it just gets people's backside. We mentioned naming, it's associated with renaming, and we're not doing that. So you'll see on the map, and it's also on the flyers that you've got, the names and existing brands continue to exist, the likes of Burkhardt, Randers of Biggerberg, Woody Point, but all the rest of it. And I often get asked, what about gardens? And if anybody can tell me where gardens starts or ends. And that is exactly the problem. People say, I live in gardens, I work in gardens. And from a real estate perspective, it means absolutely nothing, because guys at the end of Long Street use gardens. And it doesn't have a particularly strong identity, so that's what we're trying to do, is create a city that looks more like that. And that's the first neighborhood that we did. How we actually divided the city up was actually very easy, because there are a lot of key landmark streets, the likes of Bakencraft, Wales, Strand, whatever else, and you just need to walk through the city to see how it does change. Like Kloof Street, for example, the bottom end is very different to the top end, where it's more genteel, the bottom is more hippie, sort of trendy. So that's what we did. We took that to a range of architects, they reworked it, next architects, we looked at voting awards, we looked at Neighborhood Watch, because they're all different in Cape Town. So we just try to reorganize that. So with that in mind, so there is a need for neighborhoods. How do you then create names? Because initially it was just going to be a fun exercise of me going, okay, I'm going to create Noah, which is north of Wales, and whatever it might be. And I was actually walking around the waterfront with my parents, and there's a pharmacy that was busy changing its name. And they said, if you can submit a name for this pharmacy you choose, you'll get whatever it was, 500 rands worth of gift vouchers. We spent the rest of the weekend so almost unwittingly going, it's a cool name for a pharmacy. And I just thought to myself then, as the penny dropped, I thought, well, why not get the people to have this conversation that I'm having with you guys to, amongst each other, to say, what is a cool name for a neighborhood? Because all of these neighborhoods around the world have different origins. The names, some have been around for 20 years, others have been around for 1 year. So I looked at things like Idols, Big Brother, Britain's Got Talent, Next Top Model, whatever it is. Now these people want to have a say, even if your say is 1 in a million or 1 in 100. You feel a certain ownership of that person. So whether it is Susan Boyle or I can't name any top models, but whatever it is, at least you feel an ownership. You were part of that process which anointed them, whatever they were. And so that's what we thought, let's create a contest where people can actually go and name it. So that's what we did. So the campaign is all around, and you'll see on your seats were 3 flyers. The first is just a sort of PR document, which is almost like a hand-drawn map of Cape Town, or it is a hand-drawn map of Cape Town, showing the different neighbourhoods. The second one was a voting submission form, and you'll see on that form what we did is we worked with Heritage, we worked with a bunch of historians to trace the history of every single one of these neighbourhoods. So when you formulate your opinion to submit a name, we want you to actually go and explore these areas, learn about them, learn the fact, why is it called Badenbach? Why is it called Baden-Simon? Why did civilization come here in the first place? And all of these sort of things. We've traced the history back from pre-colonization to today, to try and get names that aren't just westernized or Eurocentric, but more African. So Upper East Sides, that happened. And then finally what we did is create a panel who submits all these, who sifts through these names to create a shortlist, which then goes to a public vote. So this is what the website looks like. So for example, when we're naming neighborhood 5, we'll go onto the site, you'll see it sits in Google Street View. You can see which are the key businesses in that area. You can actually go into Google Street View and walk through these areas from your desk in London or wherever you're sitting. You can actually take a stroll through, and that's one of the great benefits of the World Cup for us. All our streets are now in Google Street View. And then, crucially, as I said, we've traced the history of all these areas, so you can actually go and read what each street means, why they came to be there, what's the architecture in that area. And armed with all that knowledge, you can then go and submit a name for that area. And then we've got a panel of people, and this was a very necessary step, is to take a panel to see all the names, reduce them to enduring good names, which made a shortlist, and the shortlist then goes to public vote. So you'll see, because often this is a question, so how do you choose the panel? We try to just get a group that is very representative of Cape Town, a mix of sort of celebrities, Capetonian celebrities, historians, interest groups, MCs, comedians, and that was the panel. And then it goes to a vote. So we simply say, here's a short list of 10 names that have emerged from this process, up to you to go and vote. And it's that sort of democratic. Off the back of it, we are trying to create community websites and to give actual brands to each name as it emerges. So for example, to Worskloof, the logo is the little pig. I don't know if you've seen, but in Worskloof, the little pig farm that runs around. And so we work with designers, we said, well, let's find the essence of these areas, and let's try and sort of bottle that in a logo form. So we've done the same for various areas. And then, just to create a site that's free community platform where you can go and advertise whatever you want. Again, we've looked at different maps, so you'll see these are the names of these neighborhoods as they emerge from our process. So Little Comisa, Union Perth, just a different map of showing exactly where they sit within Cape Town. Just as a matter of interest, Little Comisa, the name itself, people often say, well, it's a weird name, why would we call it that? And through the process, you can see the motivation of why they chose it. Comisa was the original name given to Cape Town before any Western settlers arrived. That means place of sweet waters. Originally probably had an X and an exclamation mark, Isa, so not spelled like that. But it's a place of sweet waters because that's where all the fountains were. So that's why we chose the refreshment station here. That's why there was a population living here. So when you know that, and armed with that, it's cooler than Soho because it's actually real historical value, in my opinion. But again, these things are very, very subjective. So that is the concept behind Name Your Hood. What we like to say is that we're completely, it's apolitical. Anyone can take part, if you're living in expat in London, Sydney, wherever, if you feel something for Cape Town, you can take part and you can submit names. And the aim is literally just to deliver a more user-friendly city. These names, you don't have to use them. In the same way that you don't have to call Joburg Josie if you don't want to. You can call it Johannesburg, whatever sort of works for you. And that's what we try to create. It's just almost a nickname for these areas. Then, when we were doing this whole campaign, I came across the story of the terrible hijacking, of the Tringawani hijacking case, which happened in Guguletu. And I heard that it took place at the junction of NY1 and NY8, I think they were. And I just asked a friend of mine who was from Google, I said, what does that NY stand for? Where does it come from? And actually, the word actually means native yard. And when Guguletu was created in the 60s, the government at the time decided to create this new extension, and they said, right, we're just going to call this area called Guguletu, our pride, but we're going to call every street, not going to give them a street number or street name, it's just going to be NY, the prefix, and it goes from 1 to about 180 odd. So to this day, the identity of people in Guguletu is shaped by that heinous system of naming. So we said, well, and this is directly from Wikipedia. It says that this is what that NY stands for. There's strong pressure for many of these areas to be named. So I went and teamed up with Guguletu, who's sitting in the back, who works for SADF, the South African Black Entrepreneurs Forum. And I said, look, we've created this platform, the system we've worked on. Let's take this to GOATS. And let's, for the first time in South Africa's history, let the people name where they live. So that's what we're doing. That's what we're launching on the 27th of April, on Freedom Day. So in a very similar way to what we did for Cape Town, we're doing the same for GOATS, cutting up into areas. And again, this is a sensitive process. So we've been through all the sort of channels we need to. So from how the police demarcate the area, how the local citizens get where the schools are, and the like. So there are 8 neighborhoods that we've sort of created, and each one of them has something sort of slightly quirky or unique about them. So the system will be a lot more manual and on the ground. So the Cape Town system was obviously very digital, given the audience and the platform, whereas in Googs, it's really a lot more daunting or handing out flyers saying, this is what this is all about, this is how you get involved. You can go and submit these forms at this ballot box. And this is how you can motivate your names. And we're going to be including the whole public participation for the city around street renaming as part of our process. So at the same time, it will be you guys get your name where you live, and you create ownership of that. Because through that identity comes the pride, comes the willingness to rebuild, to improve the area that you live in. So that is exactly how it's going to pan out. So we're launching on Freedom Day at the Guguletu Square Shopping Centre. We've got, through this whole process, we've got a media partner in Good Hope FM and SABC, so they'll be there in the evening. Premier Zilla will be speaking, the Mayor will be speaking. We've got the Guguletu tenors are going to be performing, a couple of school choirs and the like. So it's almost trumpeting what Googs is all about. It's not just Zollies where you go for whatever, it's actually showcasing the unique flavour of every one of these neighbourhoods. And we really are so hopeful that this is going to be almost a catalyst for other neighbourhoods and townships to take ownership of where they live. So we're really excited about that, and if you want to find anything more about it, I've left some business cards here so front so you can collect those. So that's neighbourhood. I just wanted to emphasize, as this whole business model emerged, and it was never set out to be where it is now. So my creative journey, I guess, is I feel a bit of a fraud saying I'll be creative because it wasn't my background. But I stumbled on this idea and spent a lot of time just refining it to where it is now. And at the same time, if you look at the international trends that are sort of pervasive, there's a huge move to localization. People, you look at the neighborhood markets that we've got and everything else. Smartphone penetration, the government ad spend is trying to get more and more money into more localized communities. It's just easier to manage things, eat an elephant bite by bite. Same thing, it's easier to do things in small areas. Densification, without getting too political and economic minded, but if you look at places like Brazil, China, the reason why they're growing, the economy is outstripping ours is because there's a huge drive to urbanization. It's 90% in Brazil, whereas we're not anywhere near that. A place like New York breeds success and whatever else because people migrate to the same thing. So urban densification. I mentioned things like analytics. Once you have a neighborhood, you're able to create yardsticks and measure neighborhoods against each other. If it's on green issues, school, education, whatever it is, you actually start almost competitive inter-neighborhood rivalries. And then sustainability. If we start having things like solar panels, you can do it per neighborhood. You can create a shopping guide, like you saw for Soho, for workout, and get tourists to go there, and it's just more sustainable than doing homogenous city bowl. And that lovely marketing catchword, social, local, mobile. And that's a space we're trying to sort of get into. And at the heart of that is what we're trying to do. It's literally around building communities and identities through neighborhood. And I invite you and sort of beg you to go and take part in this process, because through more interaction, more people will create awareness around neighborhoods, and hopefully our profile will be boosted in that way. And I really thank you for your time this morning. It's been great sharing the story with you.